Welcome to the Silver Screen Guide podcast, where we discuss films from every genre. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast.
I see dead people. Today we are discussing The Sixth Sense. This is your co-host Corbin.
I'm Allen. This is the one. Finally, we actually get into what I guess most people would consider the actual Shyamalan movies. The last two were definitely from him, but these are the ones from here on out where people know him most from.
And don't forget, I do have the review up for Stuart Little. We took a road trip during spring break, so I'm like, hey, I'll watch Stuart Little. And for those of you who are wondering, what does Stuart Little have to do with M Night Shyamalan? Well, he wrote the film, so I thought we weren't going to cover it in the podcast because he did co-wrote it technically, so it's really not his film. But just for fun, I included that in his oeuvre of work, so we do have that review. And it did make sense because in '98, Wide Awake was a quasi-family film, you could say, and Stuart Little came out that year as well. But yeah, I'm really glad we're finally getting to the real deal Shyamalan stuff because honestly, nobody really knows about Praying with Anger, I would say. Very few.
Right.
And then Wide Awake, I didn't even know about that before we decided to do the retrospective series. But The Sixth Sense, people consider this to be like Shyamalan's first film. It's really not. It's kind of his third, almost kind of his fourth. But nevertheless, right. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and for many people, this is probably the one that they would consider to be his magnum opus. Mm-hmm. One of the best, if not his best movie that he's ever made. And we'll talk about if we feel that is justified or not. But yeah, this is the one. Finally, after 3 movies, he's made one that I guess this would be the one that really put him on the map. He did get with a pretty big company, a pretty big production company for this one, compared to at least to his last 2. So yeah, this was the one. This and then Unbreakable the year after, and then kind of continued to make movies for the next whoever knows how long. Now, of those who do know Shyamalan's track record, you know that there has been a pretty giant dip that's come into his quality in the last few years. It might be coming out of it, maybe. We'll see what happens when we get to those reviews, though.
That will be really interesting to chronicle the life and times of M. Night Shyamalan because, yeah, he really exploded onto the scene. He was honestly an unknown director when The Sixth Sense came out, and it was huge. I mean, I'm going to do my best to relate to you listeners. We're going to travel back to 1999 and try and relate to you best how big this movie was for the year. And I think you're going to be shocked to really put it into perspective and realize how truly much of a phenomenon this was. And even still, it lives in our cultural zeitgeist. I would say not as much anymore, but the line that I quoted to you at the beginning, everybody knows that line, I would say.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those lines that, once again, everybody knows this line. Like no, Luke, I am your father, or I see dead people. One of those movie lines that everybody knows, and they all know it came from The Sixth Sense. And The Sixth Sense is also really well known for its very big twist at the end.
Yes.
Which of course we'll get to. But yeah, and really from here on out, twists with M. Night Shyamalan become pretty much the director staple of almost all, if not every single work that he has from here on out.
Now, of course, I didn't come to this movie in 1999 because I would have been roughly 4 years old. Alan would have been roughly around the same age. But yep. I do believe I rented this movie. I don't even know why. I think I was just hearing about it. I think I rented it around the age of 12. I'm not sure. But I remember my sister was gone with a friend, and she's younger than me, so we weren't going to watch it with her. I rented it with my mom and dad, and I remember we had just finished eating dinner. We popped on the movie, and I remember the opening disturbed me so much, we just had to shut it off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this movie? It's so upsetting. So don't watch it with your younger kids, listeners. You gotta wait. I mean, that PG-13 it's one of the harder PG-13s with some of the subject matters it deals with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and what's funny is, for me, I forget how I found out this twist, but I knew the twist before I actually watched this movie. I may have seen it on some YouTube video on some top 10 list or whatever, who knows. But I remember an ex-girlfriend was showing it to me one time, and I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And I told her, I was like, is this the twist? She goes, so just watch. And then at the end, I was like, I knew it. So in some ways, it was actually kind of cool seeing the way this movie is edited to also kind of fit that twist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I never came in with a clear mind and got to experience that for the first time. I did, however, get to see my cousin's reaction when I showed it to him a while back, and it blew his mind with what happened. But yeah, I myself did not get to experience the twist that is this movie. That is one of the biggest reasons why people remember it so much.
I wish I could remember my reactions to big twists in films more. I just don't remember my reactions. So maybe when I have kids and I get to experience these twists with them all over again, maybe I'll have forgotten them all. I'll be so old by that time. Who knows? But I'm going to figure out a way to secretly record them and get their reactions. So then they can remember and I can remember, because I don't remember. But nevertheless, Alan, did you realize this movie was actually originally owned by Disney?
No, I guess I didn't know that. Really?
Can you imagine Disney's The Sixth Sense?
Yeah, it would not be nearly as spooky as this version is, I'm afraid, if Disney really had all the rights to it.
No, Disney can't really produce a spooky movie because they got in trouble with the Black Cauldron.
Yeah, the closest one that I guess that they've come to really is Haunted Mansion, which was more of a comedy than it was a spooky movie. So
they did.
I guess the closest one that I could think of to actually an actual horror movie per se.
There's another one that you should look into, listeners, and you should too, Alan. I watched it for the first time. It's an older one called Watcher in the Woods. Okay. It has a number of quite creepy elements and some decent editing, and it kind of has a bit of a foreign film feel to it. As for whether that movie works, well, I'll leave that up to you. But regardless, there was this man named David Vogel who was president of production at Walt Disney Studios. He loved the script, and he bought it for $3 million. But Disney was like, hey, what the heck? You can't do this. And we kind of wanted you gone anyway, so you're fired. And we're just going to sell the script to Spyglass Entertainment. But Disney still maintained distribution rights and 12.5% of the box office, which is kind of sneaky, but was quite smart because I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This would be the second highest grossing film of 1999, only behind The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and I mean, that does make sense because, yes, that was the return of Star Wars that he had to go up against in terms of competing in the box office for the #1 movie of the year. So, yeah, no wonder it came in second place. I'm sure if it came out the year after, it would have been in first place. But the year after, it went to Unbreakable. So, But yeah, that makes total sense which is still impressive, though. Don't get me wrong. Still very impressive that a pretty much first-time director, at least in this kind of a sense, gets this number of box office revenue. Still very impressive.
He had some big producers behind him making this movie, which I'm sure really helped. If you'll notice, Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, who are no lightweights, easily probably the biggest producers of our time. They always work closely with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. They produced all of the Indiana Jones films, the Star Wars films, and like Kathleen Kennedy is like in charge of Lucasfilm now or something.
Right. Yeah. I know that there was some controversy with her that came up after the last Star Wars movie, but yeah, she's definitely one of the most well-known names in terms of a producer role, in films from the American style, like, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, things like that.
Well, and it should be noted that for the year 2000, thanks to a massive 6-month online marketing campaign, I can't imagine having to wait 6 months to get a movie from the time it hit theaters. That's it's usually not the case now. But it was the highest selling DVD of 2000, so that's pretty cool.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see it.
And of course, AFI awarded this movie the most memorable and repeated quotes of I See Dead People. It's in the 44th most memorable quote. And according to AFI, it's the 60th most thrilling film of all time.
Interesting.
Now, of course, like I said, this movie was a big success, and it had a budget of $40 million. It had a massive domestic gross of $293 million, internationally $379 million, for a worldwide total of $672.8 million. And it was the highest grossing horror film up until only 2 years ago, when it was dethroned by the remake of It.
Well, that does make sense. But yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Considering, considering the circumstances that we have with this director, and pretty much a first-time director with this big of a movie, and with a subject matter that is relatively new to the audience, to the bigger audience here in America and around the world. Very impressive once again.
Yeah, and clearly Shyamalan was a safe bet, because, I mean, it's really surprising. I mean, clearly I think his previous 2 films were, like, decently well made, but they didn't earn anything. There was no profit return on those.
Right.
So, giving him a $40 million budget, which was bigger than anything he'd worked with, but clearly he, like, Ginza triple-tupled it, whatever. I mean, with over close to $700 million for the worldwide box office. And adjusting for inflation, this is Shyamalan's highest grossing film. And I should note, listeners, Shyamalan is a billion-dollar director, meaning his films combined have grossed over $1 billion in the domestic box office.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And I should note, it did come in at number 1 at the box office opening weekend, and it would actually stay number 1 for 5 weeks, and it didn't drop out of the top 5 until after 9 weeks.
That's, once again, still very impressive.
So for opening weekend, it went up against The Thomas Crown Affair, Mystery Men, which I actually watched not that long ago. It stars Ben Stiller and William H. Macy, some other people. Most notably, the Smash Mouth song All Star makes its appearance in that film.
Ah, yes. That's become kind of a meme, and then it kind of died out recently.
Mm-hmm. And also it went up against The Iron Giant, Warner Brothers film, which I would say is much more beloved now than it was back then, because back then it came in at number 9 at the box office. That one's very much a cult following, has more of a cult following now. I remember one time Cartoon Network actually played that movie back to back all day. Ooh. I watched it. That was when I got tired of it when I was a kid, because I think I watched it like 3 or 4 times right in a row. I'm just like, I don't want to watch this movie anymore. Oh gosh,
so,
that's funny.
I've only seen pieces since then, but from what I understand, it's very much a very beloved movie after many years after it came out.
So for the top 5 for that year in August 6, 1999, Sixth Sense was number 1, of course. The Blair Witch Project was second, which makes sense. They kind of have a bit of a similar, flavor to them, subject matter in a way. Runaway Bride was third. Enjoy that movie. The Thomas Crown Affair and Deep Blue Sea.
I've seen Deep Blue Sea.
Isn't that shark movie?
What? That's such a silly movie. Yes, it's about a shark that gets, I guess, cut loose in this giant, SeaWorld aquarium-like thing.
Always wanted to
research
see it.
lab. It's got Samuel L. Jackson in it, and it's got a pretty cool scene where he dies. He gets his arm bitten off.
Okay, I'm gonna have
with
to
some
watch it.
really amazing CGI.
Well, audiences at the time did really enjoy it, but not as much as I was expecting, considering kind of the impact. It got an A-, which is nothing to snub your nose at, but I was expecting at least an A, possibly an A+, but nevertheless, an A- is still great. I'm just a little surprised.
Oh yeah. When we talked about this before, the ratings for CinemaScore are weird. It seems to be good if it's like, I think I said above like a B+ or above. It seems to be good in the public side. Anything below that is either mediocre or not great.
Yeah.
It's just how it kind of works out with CinemaScore, I suppose. So yeah, A- is still very good.
Mm-hmm. Critics gave it an 86% fresh, and it's a 90% audience approval on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty impressive numbers. And on IMDb, it has come to reside at an 8.1, and it is considered the 162nd greatest film of all time, according to IMDb users.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely got a lot of accolades, I would say. A lot of people really enjoy this movie, and some, I'm sure, find it to be one that I'm pretty sure that they grew up with. Maybe because of the twist and changed their lives for cinema or whatever. You know, yeah, this movie is very beloved, at least from, I guess, the American side of things.
Oh, and did I forget to mention it went to the Academy Awards that year? Got nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
Once again, very impressive. Yeah. Oh. Because considering the last movie that M Night Shyamalan made, which I know you and I kind of just dogged on the whole time, now he's going from more Razzie-worthy awards to being 6 nominations at the Oscars. Pretty big turnaround, I would say.
Yeah, Best Picture, Haley Joel Osment got nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Best Actress, Toni Collette. Shyamalan was nominated for Best Director and nominated for Best Original Screenplay, and the film was nominated for Best Film Editing. I guess if we're going to start giving out Oscars to Collette and Osment, then I'm a little surprised Bruce Willis isn't in there as well. That seems a little weird.
Yeah.
But it didn't win any Oscars. A huge snub.
Yeah, that is surprising that it didn't get anything at the Oscars. I wonder what else was going up against it that year.
I don't remember. You can look. I don't remember.
Look it up. Oh, look, here it is. I guess we have American Beauty, The Insider, Talented Miss Ripley, Magnolia, The Green Mile, Music of the Heart. So, I mean, there's still some really good competition here. Yeah, Being John Malkovich are all movies that were nominated for something this year. So, I guess I can see why I probably didn't get anything, but still, even having a nomination is a really big deal.
Well, and just to explore this just a little bit further, Haley Joel Osment was very young to be nominated. The only other person that I know of that won that was even younger than this was... Oh, I'm blanking on her name. She plays Rogue in the X-Men movies. She's also... she was in the Piano... She was really young. She did a fantastic job in that film. She did win the Oscar that year, which is pretty cool.
Right.
Also, Toni Collette is in this movie. I didn't even remember that at all because when I saw Hereditary last year, I'm like, who's this? I've never heard of this actress. She must be kind of new here on the scene. No, Oscar-nominated actress. And she's not above being in garbage movies, though, because she was in Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage, in an awful role.
Right.
But Haley Joel Osment was a really in-demand young actor for the time. He just boom, 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 one year after another. He was in this, and then he would go on to be in Steven Spielberg's AI, Artificial Intelligence.
Apparently he was in Kingdom Hearts.
What?
Yeah, he was the voice of Sora.
Oh.
You know, the main character.
Oh, duh.
At least the English version.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Secondhand Lions. Using that one too. We did talk about him.
Yes, so
a few weeks ago.
Yes, so Haley Joel Osment was a very in-demand actor at the time. He was in The Sixth Sense in 1999, which got him the Oscar nomination. Then he would go on to be in Steven Spielberg's AI Artificial Intelligence in 2001. Well, the year before that, he was in Pay It Forward with Kevin Spacey, who had recently got the Oscar for American Beauty. And then he was in Secondhand Lions, which we have reviewed. I love that movie. That was my birthday pick in 2003. And as far as I can tell, his career was just really isolated to the early 2000s.
Yeah, it seems like in the 90s into the early 2000s is really where I guess people mostly remember him from. He's still around here and there, but you don't see him very much at all like he used to back in the late 90s, early 2000s with all these movies that he was being a part of. Because that's usually how people remember him, is just kind of this really good babyface actor. And now I don't know if he's done too much or if people are just not offering him roles anymore. You know, who really knows? But yeah, isn't as popular as he used to be.
And, well, you know, we can't help but think of This was really incredible for a young director to do this. And then the only other director that I can remember recently was Damien Chazelle, who would get, I believe, Whiplash, got 4 or 6 Oscar nominations, and then La La Land would go on to be record-breaking with 14 nominations, and then, of course, First Man with a couple as well. So that, Damien Chazelle been incredibly successful, and this is a good start for Shyamalan, so I'm really intrigued to see where Shyamalan's career goes from here. And how exciting would that be to be in 99, to see The Sixth Sense, just to be kind of like in awe of it, and then it be just massively successful, the biggest movie talked about of the year, and which has maintained a better reputation than The Phantom Menace, I might add.
Yeah. That was an interesting movie because when it first came out, people were like, oh my gosh, just the best Star Wars movie ever. And then people slowly begin to realize, oh wait, it's not that good.
Well, and then also, I guess, in the vein of horror, this is very reminiscent of Jordan Peele, how with his very first film, Get Out, got 4 or 5 nominations, and he won the Oscar for writing, at least. And it always is exciting to see a first-time director do that, and then it makes you incredibly excited for their career. So I would have been really excited to see where Shyamalan went. I know where he went, but not fully because we still have yet to explore his films. I just hope that doesn't happen to Jordan Peele, though, where they kind of just fall off, or Damien Chazelle, where they were kind of this hit wonder, and then they're gone.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Shyamalan had a really good first few movies, and then began to slowly kind of fall off. I think Chazelle has 3 years. No, he has 4, technically speaking, because of Guy and Madeline, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And Jordan Peele has 2, so we haven't seen their fall off just yet, if that's ever going to come. Yep.
There is kind of a cutoff line that many consider with Shyamalan, where there's a noticeable just plummet. But we'll talk about that. I'm not making any judgments yet. I have not seen all of his films, so just because other people don't like them doesn't mean that I won't.
Right.
Well, listeners, we are about to get into spoiler territory. Before we do, 2 little last tidbits of trivia. While you watch this movie, look for the color red. It is used sparingly and on purpose. Also, Marissa Tomei was considered for the role of Lynn Sear, Cole's mom. So, kind of interesting. Like I said, listeners, we're about to spoil The Sixth Sense, so if you have not seen The Sixth Sense and you do want to watch it, it is on Netflix right now. That is probably the most accessible way to watch it, or just get it from your library or rental store. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's been Netflix forever. I can't remember the time when it actually wasn't on Netflix.
That is true.
To be honest with you.
That's true. So go ahead and watch the movie, come back and click play, and we will be ready to talk about The Sixth Sense. Dr. Malcolm Crowe, played by Bruce Willis, is a renowned children's psychologist in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In fact, he was given a major award for his work, so naturally him and his wife Anna, played by Olivia Williams, decided to celebrate with a night in filled with a little romance. Except their romantic evening is disturbingly cut short by a man stripped down to his underwear and crying in their bathroom. This man begins accusing Malcolm and berating him for his lack of curing his disorders. Eventually, Malcolm realizes this man to be grown-up Vincent Gray, played by Donnie Wahlberg? I did not realize that was Mark Wahlberg's brother.
I guess it is kind of hard when he's really, really young, but...
Well, it threw me for a loop when I checked on IMDB. I did not know.
I guess I didn't realize that there were any more Wahlbergs in the acting industry.
Yes, Donnie Wahlberg still does quite a bit of acting, just mostly television, and he has been in some movies, most notably Saw 2, from what I remember, but he's been in other stuff. Gotcha. Well, it's grown-up Vincent Gray. He was a patient of his many years ago. Seeking to relieve his pain and cause some for Malcolm, he shoots himself. Well, you can't shoot yourself and then somebody else. Let me rephrase that. Seeking to relieve his pain and cause some for Malcolm, he shoots him and then himself. A year later, Malcolm has seemingly made a full recovery, and he has a new patient named Cole Sear, played by Haley Joel Osment. Cole is 9, comes from a divorced household and is an outcast, and his behavior often disturbs his mother, played by Toni Collette, and teachers at school. Through a number of sessions, Malcolm and Cole form a bond, and Cole begins to open up to Malcolm about his problems. The audience, on the other hand, sees Cole's problems play out firsthand, as Cole encounters menacing apparitions which seemingly seek to harm him, and bullies at school put him in frightening situations which cause Cole to black out. At the hospital, the dark secret everyone deemed the young boy to be crazy for is revealed. Cole sees dead people. Feeling the case is too much to handle, and Malcolm's wife ever slipping from his grasp and into another man's, he decides to drop Cole as a patient. While in his study, Malcolm comes across the old Vincent Gray tapes, except this time he stumbles upon a startling revelation. While in his study, Malcolm comes across the old Vincent Gray tapes, except this time he stumbles upon a startling revelation. After Malcolm left the room, leaving Vincent alone, a man's voice begins to speak to Vincent, giving Malcolm to realize Cole and Vincent had the same ability, but he doesn't want to fail Cole like he did Vincent. Reconnecting with the boy, he encourages Cole to simply see what the apparitions want. One night, Cole is visited by an uncontrollably vomiting girl who leads Malcolm and Cole to her funeral gathering at her house, where Cole is given the dark secret. It was the young girl's mother who purposely poisoned her to death. Cole and Malcolm now realize this is a gift, not a curse. Cole can relieve souls who have unfinished business in this world, just like Dr. Malcolm Crowe. Without Malcolm's help, Cole would have never realized his gift, and without Cole's gift, he would have never been able to speak with Malcolm, who in fact has been dead the whole time. See, Malcolm never recovered that year ago when he was shot by Vincent Gray. He died. His spirit remained on this earth in order to help Cole and help himself make up for failing Vincent. Upon discovering this truth, Cole is able to convince his mom of his gift, providing their reconciliation, and Malcolm is able to let his wife Anna go and leave this world fulfilled as credits roll.
So, yeah, once again, this movie is kind of just known for its twists, and this twist here is, hey, he's been dead the whole time. And there are times when when movies will pull the it's all a dream kind of a thing, and it totally doesn't work, and it's just there because A, they didn't know how to wrap it up, or B, it may have just been a straight up lazy script to begin with. But this is one of the few times that a movie has a twist and then builds the rest of the movie around that twist. And it's really shown more of through how scenes are written out after the opening scene, where when Malcolm goes to talk with his wife in dinner, he just kind of walks up and sits down and starts talking to her. And then she never really pays any attention to him. And then just walks off, says, "Happy anniversary." Now, you can imagine that watching it as if Malcolm was never there, and the scene still plays out in a little bit of a different way, because the character of Malcolm isn't present, but it still makes a lot of sense, because he is having really no physical contact with the world around him. It's just him as an apparition, or kind of like a ghost, a soul, kind of walking around trying to reconnect without knowing that he's dead. It's very interesting how this movie's edited and written to fit this twist at the end. And rewatching it also really shows how much care was put into how these scenes play out in order to feed this twist at the very end.
I did think about that while watching this movie, because I had seen this movie at least once before, so I knew the twist, but I was trying to determine whether the twist works, because it could easily not work. It could easily very well fall apart, save for one line that Cole explains towards the end when he says, "These ghosts, whatever you want to call them, they only see what they want to see." And that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise, one of the scenes that I think would completely crash the whole twist is when Cole comes home from school, and his mom and Malcolm are sitting together quietly in the living room. Now, I'm thinking, A, how did Malcolm get into the house? Because they would have had to have interacted, and why does she not acknowledge him? So that easily could have derailed the whole thing, but Malcolm is possibly because all the other ghosts just kind of appear, so he seemingly can just not, he can like interact physically with things, at least that's what he perceives, but also I'm assuming he could just come into places and be in situations and think and probably fill in the details of how he got there. So that does make it work.
Yeah, and pretty much every scene that's in this movie, aside from maybe a couple, have Malcolm in it, and he's doing something. Really, the only times when he's not in scenes is there towards the end, with where it's just Cole kind of dealing with those apparitions that he sees. But yeah, it pretty much everything that you see in this movie has some kind of purpose, and also kind of lends to the twist that we do get to towards the end. It is also interesting to note that every time that Malcolm sits down, like on a chair or something like that, the furniture never really moves. He kind of just walks around it and then sits on the chair. Like in the time when Cole is in like the study after he kind of yells at the teacher, Malcolm comes in and kind of goes around the chair and sits down, not really pulls it out and then sits down in it. He does that pretty much every time. They're really the only time I think that he ever really interacts with I guess an object. I guess there are 2 times. One is a window. But there's one time when he's in the hospital and he kind of scoots the stool around a little bit. Other than that, every time he really interacts with something, he never really messes with it, I guess you could say. It's always very stationary.
Now, during the opening credits, we're presented with 2 big names that I did not want to fail to mention, who I think without them, this film probably wouldn't have been as good as it was. And that is the cinematographer Tak Fujimoto, who shot a little film called The Silence of the Lambs.
Who knows that movie?
Who's ever heard of that all-time Oscar-winning movie? Did a little movie called Silence of the Lambs. Also, Tak Fujimoto has done a ton of other films. Hugely famous cinematographer. And also James Newton Howard composed the score for this film. Who I'm pretty sure he's done almost all of Shyamalan's other films. He also did a little film called Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Pretty recognizable scores, I would say. Also, I mean, he's just done anything like you can think of. Hidalgo, King Kong, Collateral, Blood Diamond, I Am Legend, Charlie Wilson's War, Michael Clayton. Just everything, almost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's a great composer, and he does work with Hans Zimmer quite a bit. That's where he worked with Hans Zimmer on the Dark Knight trilogy, at least the first 2. I don't know if he worked on it with Rises. But yeah, him and Hans Zimmer, I'm sure, have done other like partner jobs for composing music. I know Hans Zimmer does do a lot of partner jobs with the other composers. But yeah, James Newton Howard and the cinematographer we have here both are two of the biggest things that really make this film work in my mind, and how, because this movie looks really, really good and is shot really, really well. Yes. And the music, again, is really good and it's utilized really, really well. So yeah, without these 2 bigger elements to the story, we could have a very mediocre looking movie with a great twist on our hands, but that's not how this works.
No, so Shyamalan better count himself lucky. He's got like all the big guns behind him for this project.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, the cinematography and score work incredibly well because they are consistent throughout the whole movie, especially consistent with creating this atmosphere where it feels like you can sit back in your seat and watch the movie, but you're never quite comfortable. You're never quite going to let your guard down.
Yeah.
There's something very somber about these kind of cloudy Philadelphia days, and something quite unsettling when certain elements play in, and the score does a fantastic job of evoking those emotions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and especially, what's interesting, too, is that I would maybe make the argument that the traditional horror element that we see in this movie doesn't really happen until about the second half, and that's not until after we hear the line, "I see dead people." Once we hear that line, then we start actually seeing those apparitions, but anytime before that, we get hints of them, but never actually see people walking around like Cole does, which is very interesting to me that we make that decision not to show these, I guess, souls kind of trapped in purgatory, holding on to something until I think it is actually the second half, or maybe a little bit past that. But yeah, still.
It is a great choice to keep us in suspense as to the condition of this young man, because initially we see scratches on his arm, which I thought were cuts. I thought he was a 9-year-old cutting himself, which I thought, yikes, this movie is just going to keep going as darker and darker as it can go with everything. But
and I'm sure that's what he was going for too, is a kind of, oh crap, is that where we're going with this?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is a really sad movie, honestly.
Oh, yeah. There is a lot of depressing material that we talk about in this movie, like a lot of child depression because of being socially outcast, and suicide, things like that. Pretty heavy topics. Now, they're not like heavily detailed in this movie, but they are definitely mentioned, and they're kind of hard to miss. So, yeah, it does kind of push that PG-13 rating a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just with the subject material alone.
Oh, yeah. It's very surprising, honestly, with some of the elements it goes into because of how dark this movie gets. And the tone is set right off the bat with the opening of the film. His wife is creeped out in the basement, which gives us the creeps. Who likes a dark basement? Nobody. Right. And, but there still is, Shyamalan, I think, even from his previous films, maybe not so much Praying with Anger, but Wide Awake, did have some really great dialogue that was written, Praying with Anger I didn't really think as good, but Wide Awake had some funny dialogue as well. It was able to mix in humor. And like there is some humor where Malcolm is talking about she's like, where should we hang it? And he's like, for his plaque, his award, he's like, we should put it in the bathroom. And I'm like, there's that Shyamalan wit. I like that. But we do kind of build up to this scene. Like I said, you should feel safe in the home, but you just got this feeling that something's off. And I will say my heart pace was quickening because I knew what was coming. And I gotta say, this is one of the most frightening opening scenes in cinema. It is so disturbing with this guy crying half naked in the bathroom. And he's deranged, and he's possibly going to murder them. You don't know what's going to happen. I just will never forget when I first saw that. Oh, I was so upset. I was so disturbed.
And I remember when I first watched this, I was like, what point does this have with the movie? It just kind of feels weird to have this scene with this kid that Malcolm used to, I guess, work with back in the day. Out of nowhere, and when I first watched the movie, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. It isn't until on this viewing that I realized that, oh, wait, no, he's like the whole reason why this movie exists, because Cole has pretty much the exact same condition, not only with what kind of things is going on in his mind, but at the same time, his whole family situation, a divorced kid, living alone with one parent, being socially outcast, they're parallels. And so what this movie really is at least for Malcolm here, is a redemption story. Can he redeem himself by saving this kid that has pretty much the same condition as the kid that he let down like about a year ago when we show him again back in the next fall?
And it also does a good job of questioning Malcolm's true nature or his motives, whether he really is a hero. Because he was awarded by the city with this big plaque. I mean, he is extremely well regarded. But then that same night to have one of his patients say, you failed me in the most horrible way and my life is over. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill you too. It's a really dramatically intense scene. And it does call into question our kind of trust of Malcolm for the rest of the movie. Especially when he does eventually cut ties with Cole. And you're like, what the heck? And Haley Joel Osment plays that scene so well. I mean, he does well in this film with his emotions.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, too, because when the year passes, you see him sitting on this bench right outside of Cole's house, I guess apartment or house, and he's looking over the Vincent Gray file. And then when the door opens, he moves the paper over, and he's also looking at Cole's file as well, which are very similar. The movie even kind of points this out in when it displays, a divorced parent, 9 years old. They happen 9 years after one another, I think, because the other kids happened like 89, and now we're in 1998. So yeah, it's also showing here that, hey, these cases are very much very similar. They're pretty much a parallel case with these two kids.
And I think the story does a great job of playing with the sense of time.
Yeah.
Because to me, the story almost feels out of time, which I think is good. It does. Because Malcolm is more or less out of time now. Because he died and then we just jump to a year later all of a sudden, but he's still alive, but he's really not in this world. But like I was saying, like you were saying, the two files, Cole and Vincent, are almost identical with everything going on with them. So it's almost like Cole could have been this guy grown up, and you'll even notice they even have some silver flecks in their hair. But it's still a year later, so it really does kind of mess with me a little bit, thinking, okay, did we just see a flashback, or is this a flash forward, or it's that does work really well, actually. Oh yeah.
Shyamalan's use of the timeline, he kind of just messes. It's hard to really define where this movie takes place in time and where certain scenes take place in the movie's timeline. That's done on purpose. He is very much messing with our sense of time with this. It's kind of, like you were saying, kind of as if it was almost timeless with how it presents things in this movie. I think that's a very interesting way of going about telling the story, and how each scene kind of feels like it's somewhere in time, but where exactly is kind of hard to define, because it feels like this movie tracks around, I don't know, a full season, maybe even a year of kind of just like this therapy session that we have with this kid. But at the same time, when you get to the end of the movie, maybe it's not as long as it kind of felt that it was supposed to be. Maybe it's only a few days, or maybe like a month if you want to stretch it. The timeline of this movie is very weird, and there's a very good job at kind of crafting both this horror and this mystery aspect to it, as to not only where are we, but when are we, and how this also kind of ties with that, Malcolm's actually dead there at the very end.
One of the small, possibly dead giveaways as to the twist of this film that I did notice is Cole's last name is Seer, which is something more of an ancient term for somebody that can look into the spirit realm and see events of the past or future, or connect with spirits or ghosts. That's what a seer is.
Yeah.
So by giving him that last name, which I'm sure is a last name and still works, I don't know. I think Shyamalan's playing with that a little too much, trying to be a little too on the nose with that naming.
Right. I would say that there are plenty of dead giveaways for how the twist really resolves itself there at the end, but there are some of those things where they're subtle enough where you don't really pick up on it the first time. Probably the biggest dead giveaway in my mind before they actually get to the twist is with the line, "I see dead people." The camera work alone kind of just gives it away that our main character here is actually dead, because when he says, "I see dead people," I believe it's a tracking towards Malcolm when he says that. It's pretty much a dead giveaway, and that's like 20 minutes, or no, it's about 45 minutes or so before we actually find out that, oh yeah, Malcolm actually is dead the whole time. There are plenty of dead giveaways. Looking at it a second time, I would say. The first time, it's kind of like, that's kind of strange.
And I think
then it kind of, when I watched it, when I saw it, because I already knew the twist, I was like, oh, well, of course.
And I think to more audience members, they would, if not fully buy into that theory, they would at least begin to suppose that is where the film is leading. And the filmmakers were worried about that exact scene you just brought up, where it does cut to Malcolm right after he says it, and they're like, that's just going to give away the whole twist. And when it does happen, people are like, well, yeah, I know, because we already revealed it. But they thought it was ambiguous enough, because the focus quickly shifts away from Malcolm, and then it begins to focus like directly on his apparitions, whatever he sees. So, yes, that was a contentious point that they were worried about leaving in, but ultimately it did. And I would say, yeah, for the first time, most people won't pick up on it, the more astute viewers might, but then on the second viewing, that is more possible.
Yeah. And I would say that the scenes when Malcolm is trying to interact with his wife are probably the scenes that kind of help lay over this twist that does eventually come to reveal itself, because they are shot in a way where you could take it both ways. Either she's just kind of like, okay, the dinner scene I mentioned earlier, when he goes to meet her at the restaurant that he's totally late for. The scene plays out as if maybe she's listening to him, maybe she's just kind of actively ignoring him because it's their anniversary and this was like, one of the last straws or whatever. Something like that. They do know that their marriage is falling apart at this point. So I would say that maybe these scenes, especially with his wife, that's mostly where the masking comes in. They do kind of help hide this. They put over this cover that, no, there's no way he could be dead because he was talking with his wife. But in reality, he really wasn't, because the scenes are kind of laid out in a way where they look as if he's doing something, but in reality, he's not really communicating with her at all. She's on her own, and so she acts on her own, even though Malcolm is technically there as like a spirit or apparition.
Yes, there are a lot of well-done red herrings in this film. And it was a smart choice to have Malcolm, who is a ghost or whatever, be in scenes with real living people that we have no question that they are alive. And that does help because we do see him get shot, but then we see him, he's perfectly fine, and he's interacting with so many different people. The only person we actually see him interact with, which, like I said, maybe if you're more of an astute viewer, you might start to question it. The only person he ever talks to in this movie, aside from the very beginning, he only talks to two people in this movie, as far as I know. Anna, his wife, in the beginning, then he's shot, and then he only talks with Cole. Otherwise, he's just in scenes with other people and acts like he's a part of the conversation.
Right, yeah, and especially that scene where you brought up earlier when when Cole walks in and his mom and Malcolm are sitting there. Yeah. There are scenes where it looks as if something had transpired before that, and maybe there was, but he never really interacted with them. The only other time that he actually interacted with anybody other than Cole is his wife, and that's when she's sleeping, which he gets the idea of doing that when Cole tells him, hey, try talking with her when she's sleeping. Which also comes with the redemption arc of him and his wife, because we have had that marriage falling apart kind of thing, which I guess it kind of is. It's kind of strange to say that because he's totally dead. But it still works out that he's able to, I guess, tell her one last time that I love you, before he does eventually go away. It's very interesting how this movie works with this person who is actually dead the whole time. And at first you don't realize it. Then the whole movie is actually all about that. He is actually dead the whole time. And every scene that plays out works with that in some kind of a way.
Yeah. And the way that I saw him and his wife's character, their story arc is, the way he perceives everything is that their marriage is falling apart, but the whole point of it is he's coming to terms with the fact that he has left her here on this earth just kind of helpless and almost abandoned, and they're always watching their wedding video, which I always find to be kind of really touching sequences. Is he's talking about how much they love each other, and he will always love her until death do they part, And essentially, he's basically coming to terms with the fact he's living in a state of denial, and the denial comes out as our relationship is falling apart. We're losing connection with each other, when in fact they completely have, but he just doesn't realize it yet.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think, because at first when I first watched this movie, I was like, was kind of questionable about how this movie was made. At least in terms of how the scenes play out. Because I'm just like, yeah, but they're kind of, is it, okay, my biggest question when I first watched this movie, knowing the twist, is, do these scenes still work together even though the twist exists here? Or are they just kind of written in this way where they're forcing this twist to happen rather than letting it happen naturally? And at first I'm just like, the twist, the scenes just kind of feel as if they're more made to be this way, where they aren't exactly letting the audience kind of figure out what's going on until after they watch it. But when I've watched it a second time, I kind of realized, no, there's a great reason why these scenes are this way. That also kind of helps serve the twist there at the very end. And without that twist and without these scenes are made, I guess this movie would be kind of harder for the twist to really work, or it would give it away too quickly.
Yeah, I don't think I really have any complaints with that. Like I said, at first I was really worried this wouldn't work upon subsequent viewings. It would just be like too obvious that it just wouldn't make any sense. But I believe Malcolm says a few lines sometimes how, because he's always making up excuses why he can't keep appointments or he's always late, is he's like, I just can't keep track of time anymore, or I don't even remember the exact places of where these events happened anymore, like where with him and his wife's anniversary. So I do think those sequences work and those explanations work. One of the things I did find interesting is he's still able to interact with the world around him, but only when he's like extremely emotional. Like when he sees his wife and that man about to kiss, he throws a rock at the shop window, which that would really make us believe that he is a real person. He's not an apparition because he physically interacted with the world around him. But I think that's just because of, that's just a part of the process of his redemption and coming to terms, and kind of that anger is physically, it just permeated that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think there were really only two moments where he actually interacts with some kind of physical object, and that's the rock when he goes out the window in the ring shop, and when he is scooting around the chair, which even then we don't really actually see the chair move. We just see the camera is just on him and how he kind of slides over, and we do hear the sounds of the chair moving. But yeah, aside from really those two moments, there really isn't anything else that he interacts with in the world physically. Not even, and it's kind of hard to say, well, he has a notebook that has stuff in it, but that also may just be a part of, I guess, his spirit, because he also is wearing clothes. I don't really want to get into that. But yeah, aside from like a couple of moments where they're highly emotional, nothing else here he really interacts with. It does kind of subtly play with the rules that are in this world that I guess Cole is experiencing, where these souls are kind of trapped in purgatory, and very rarely do they ever interact with certain things. There are a few times where that does happen, but not very often. And if even aside from, I think aside from Malcolm, it may not happen at all with other apparitions that we see.
An interesting dynamic between Cole and his mom that I did want to bring up is when Cole comes home from school, they both talk about their day, but it's completely made up. So they both indulge in escapism as a way to sweep life's problems under the rug. And I just find it very fascinating that Cole's mom wants him to like deal with these problems. Like she's like, you can't keep going on, with these like kind of little psychotic temper tantrums. But then at the same time, she doesn't encourage him to face reality either. So the family dynamic between Cole and his mom is fairly intricate and well played out. And I was pretty impressed with the realism, I guess, of the dynamic between the two. Because I would say that, parents don't always want to face the fact that maybe their kid does have a big problem. So they kind of want to just sweep it under the rug, which doesn't do the kid any favors, but nevertheless, a nice scene. A good character building for both of them.
Yeah, this definitely kind of lays out, I mean, we kind of already knew Cole's, I guess, life, where he was at already, but it does help us get into terms with where his mom is at, where turns out she's kind of struggling for money. We find out later she has 2 jobs. And so when she's talking to him, she goes, I won the lottery today. And kind of goes to play with your boy an opposite day. They're kind of hard for money at this point in their lives. It's kind of hard for them to survive. And I like that aspect that does only kind of subtly play into the story, but you do got to get this sense that, life just totally isn't perfect for either of them. And we do find out that I believe his dad walked away from the whole marriage because Cole was having all these psychotic issues. And it does kind of play a little bit with maybe his mom will leave too. There's a scene a little bit later where it's kind of hinted at that she might walk away from him too, but then she totally doesn't. And in the scene that happens right after that, we get a sense that, that she's never going to do that. It's interesting that they play with that. And it also kind of goes with Cole and his fears of his mom also leaving him because of these things that he's experiencing, which also would be why he hasn't told her what he's experiencing either, which is he can see dead people, He only tells, before this, I think he really only tells Malcolm that he can see dead people, and it isn't until later when he's in the car with his mom that he does reveal that, this is what's going on with me. It's very interesting how they play up with this. I really do enjoy how it's, you can understand it, but at the same time it's rather complex, because it's not as simple as there's just a condition that I have to deal with my son. It's, I don't know what's wrong with him, and it's very hard for doctors to figure out what's wrong with him because he has more of a psychotic issue going on with him where he can see dead people walking around. It's interesting that they play up this how the mom tracks through, I guess both of them track through this relationship that they both try to have with each other.
The theme of like parent-child relationships, and even the theme of absent fathers or poor male role models is explored very well, I would say, in this. Because like you said, Cole and his mom have a loving relationship, but definitely a tentative one. Cole's dad walked out on him. Also, we know the same thing happened with Vincent Gray, and he felt like Malcolm failed him. And at one point, Malcolm does walk out on Cole, just like his dad did. And that's a pretty hard scene because of how much trust they had built up between each other. Cole trusted no one as much as he did Malcolm, and Malcolm leaves him. And then also, Cole's apparitions seem to center around not all of them, but a number of them do, where like the woman, her husband beats her. Also, the guy, the one kid briefly says, "Hey, let's go check out my dad's gun." And also, when they do find that little girl, and you find out the mom poisoned her. And this is just playing off the theme that was set up in the very beginning of the father figure or the male as protector of the family, and then failing to do so, and coming to terms with how the father figure can fail, but there is redemption for him, because Malcolm is coming to terms with how he failed to protect Anna and continue to be with her. And that father failed to protect his little girl from his psychotic wife. And the father failed to protect the son from apparently shooting himself in that one scene. And Cole's dad failed him. So that arc of redemption where Malcolm is like, okay, I did fail a lot of people. I walked out on them, but I'm not going to fail you, Cole. That is a good redemption. And that whole theme is explored really well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do a really good job at bringing forth this idea that kind of, I guess, not very good parents to their children.
Yes,
because it kind of goes both ways. They just kind of focus more on the father and how the father is a failure in terms of keeping his kids in line and actually parenting instead of walking out on them. But then you also have that one scene there towards the end where they do focus heavily on it, where Cole finds out from a girl who just recently died. They find out that their mom poisoned her. So it kind of goes both ways. The mom is supposed to be very caring and loving, and in this scene, she's totally not being that way. And then most of it, of course, is all focused towards the father. Him not being, the father he's supposed to be. And Malcolm also kind of fills this role, mostly with Cole, in the role that he probably should have. He just kind of realizes that he probably should have failed when he was helping out Vincent there at the beginning. He's kind of putting on himself into this fatherly role. And that kind of becomes Cole's, I guess, the way he becomes a character that Cole really looks up to, especially there towards the end. So yeah, they do play it is interesting that they bring in this focus towards, I guess, parenting in general, but more so fatherhood and what it means to be a father in certain ways. This movie just kind of in general reminds me a bit of Jacob's Ladder. And I'm sure there was probably some kind of inspiration from that movie, because they both are about a father. Well, I guess Mark was really a father, technically speaking, a father, because he is child psychology, and how they kind of deal with the fact this world around them in like this purgatory state.
One of the other inspirations I saw for this movie was The Shining, because that is about the father-son relationship where Danny can see things, and then ultimately Jack becomes the thing that he fears the most. And I think that's kind of Cole's worry is, will he help me? Because in the beginning, he says, I was thinking you're nice, but you can't help me. And just real quick, I love that scene. I do love the scene where the mind reading game, where they kind of like really get to first meet each other.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, take a step forward and a step back. That scene is so well done on, like, not just technically, but the acting and how it's shot. Gets me into the movie so quickly. But also, The Shining is literally kind of manifested when Toni Collette sees the pictures in the hallway, and there is a shining glimmer next to Cole. And that seems to be a big motif in every movie where there's a ghost next to a child. I know Insidious ripped that off. And I've just heard other stories where they take a picture and then all of a sudden you could see the ghosts in the background. This one's not as much, but I do think that is Shyamalan kind of paying some homage to Stephen King, maybe taking some of that with The Shining.
Oh, yeah. And I do want to talk about a little bit of color with this movie, because there were two big uses of red and green that are opposites of each other, by the way, on the color wheel. They're complementary. And so what's interesting, I think the scene that really sticks out in my mind is the birthday party scene, because you see a red balloon float to the top of the spiral staircase. Cole is wearing a red vest, so he goes up to investigate, and then a couple of kids that one of them I think is actually a birthday party. I believe it's actually Tommy. Him and another kid stuff him into, I guess it would be the dumbwaiter or something. This little closet that they have at the top of the stairs. And then his mom, who is wearing green, by the way, comes and saves him. It's a very interesting visual. Red is kind of tied in with death in this movie, and then green is kind of the other way around, where it's more facing towards life, I suppose you could say. Then you've also got the red door handle in Malcolm's house. That's right underneath the stairs, and he never can get it. And we never see him actually actively opening in this movie. It's very interesting, the color of red. There's just a couple of instances, but it's all over the place in this movie. Those are the two colors that are primarily used in this film to express some kind of emotion or some kind of theme.
Yeah, the color red is used as a catalyst for characters to figure out revelations or for events to happen to them, which do cause them to figure things out. And it is interesting because red is associated with death, but in a way, it's almost more so associated with life, because the characters in the real world, like in the living characters, are always dressed so drab, and like everybody's like dressed like they're ready for a funeral. It seems like half the time. But then when Cole does go and see the dead people, it's in order to release them from this world so they can, I don't know, go on to eternity. I guess the movie doesn't really explore that aspect of it, but the color red is a catalyst, and it does contrast in a very interesting way with this seemingly dead world and this kind of world woven into ours.
Yeah, it kind of pulls from the Jacob's Ladder view of this man stuck in purgatory because he's holding on to his past life. This one takes it a bit more of a simple approach, where it's Malcolm focusing and holding on to the failed case that he had with Vincent, and how he's going to redeem himself with that. Whereas where Jacob's Ladder is more of him holding on to almost everything in his life because he feels as if he's died too early. So aside from that, the colors in this movie, I think, are one of the more important aspects, because especially in this scene with the birthday party, it kind of is this, I guess you could say, yin and yang of life and death between the two colors and how they're expressed. At least throughout this whole movie. Red could also, I guess, be kind of a visual towards the color of blood, because there is we do see a lot of that in terms of death in this movie, like when Malcolm is shot and then you see the blood kind of spilling out onto the bed sheets. Or that one kid that kind of walks through his house where he clearly shot himself in the head. And he says, hey, let's go check out my dad's gun. So I wonder if that's kind of where it's more focused towards, is death in terms of the color of blood, maybe. Who knows? There are probably 3 or 4 different readings you can get from it.
The locked door with the red door handle made me think of an Argento-style mystery.
Yeah.
Where, you kind of
Absolutely.
wonder what's behind the blue iris. Except this was kind of a red crystal doorknob. So I thought that was a nice touch. One of the scenes in this movie that is kind of dumb and is kind of beneath the storytelling here is when Malcolm is in his basement and he circles this section in a book that says, quote, "A doctor must be aware a child may inflict his own bruises and abrasions." You're telling me he just learned this? To me, this most likely seems for the audience's benefit, but one of the kind of rookie storytelling mistakes is over-explaining to the audience.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my bigger issues with this movie kind of in general is it does kind of over-explain a few things, like this is a redemption story, and Malcolm mentions more than one time that the other cases are so similar when he compares Cole's and Vincent's case files. That's one of the things I didn't really like is that it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't leave room for interpretation because it is, I would say, subtle enough that you could probably find another reading about it. But it is also not. It is also not very subtle with how it presents really any kind of information in this movie. It's very much pretty pointed, I guess I could say, just kind of in general with everything that it does. That's just not one thing I wish they would have done is made it a bit more subtle. That way you, I guess, could get more than one reading out of it maybe, or you could feel something different. Who knows? I just found that to be one of the things I didn't really like too much about it.
One of the other small nitpicks that I did have was we do get at least one jump scare in this movie. I thought, really? That's kind of below you. It's really that really uncomfortable scene where we're watching Cole pee from behind, and then somebody walks by real quick, and we get the music and the jump, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, at least this movie doesn't do anything else with jump scares other than this one scene. And I believe this is the first time we do see one of the apparitions, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. That's the first time.
So, yeah, okay, that's right. So, it doesn't bother me too much because it's kind of making it all kind of spooky, because you does see apparitions and we're now getting to see what those apparitions look like. So, I didn't bother me too much. They did a jump scare. There are times where I think jump scares do work, and this one I would say works for me, but there are plenty of other times where jump scares are way overutilized for a movie, mostly used in horror. So yeah, that didn't bother me too much, being that it was really the one and only time, and it does help set up that this is the first time we're seeing these apparitions, these souls trapped in this purgatory. So yeah, that didn't bother me too much.
Did you notice the Shyamalan cameo?
Yep, he was the doctor. Telling mom that, yeah, we don't know what's wrong with your kid.
Except we think that it's your fault. Right?
Yeah. It is interesting, too, that they have that, like, in doctors' offices, they have that little, like, I don't even know how to explain it, that, like, track where you can take the beads and roll it around the track.
Children's toy.
I haven't seen one of those in a while, so that was interesting that they had that between them. I mean, it makes sense, but still.
Yeah, it was good. It felt a little like they were being maybe a little on the nose with some of those shots right there, where it almost felt a little too artistic, that it was just a bit unnecessary.
This is one of those points where I think that they may be over-exploiting things, at least in terms of visuals here. For me, it's not that big of a deal, but it is something that is there. So.
In Shyamalan fashion, he is continuing the trend of bringing in either religion or most specifically Christianity in some form. As we know, with Praying with Anger, it was him dealing with the Hindu upbringing side. Wide Awake was his Catholic upbringing. And with this, Christianity does play a role, but one that I feel is not as explored as much as it probably should be if they're going to bring it up this much. Because they meet in a church twice, I think, possibly 3 times. And sanctuary, that is an old term meaning for somebody who is seeking refuge. They would go to the sanctuary where the authorities couldn't come in there and get them, or they would have some kind of protection from the outside world. So, I mean, I think that's a really nice aspect of having Cole go in there. But he also has this little tent, or almost this little shrine that he filled with Christian figures such as Joseph and Mary and Jesus, which I'm assuming he is saying he wants this spiritual protection from these apparitions. But I guess what I'm supposed to get out of it is the reason he's not being protected from them is because I guess God has given him this gift to use to find these people. Because when he is hiding in there, one of the apparitions comes in there. And so it kind of almost seems like a sign that he's meant to see this and not run away from what he perceives as a problem.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of cryptic with how it's talking about religion here. And in some aspect, I wonder if he was trying to avoid some of the topics that I guess you could really easily get into with life and death with this kind of a story. Because it is there. It is definitely an important part of the story, but he also does not linger on it very much, I guess, than he has before in the past, those last two movies. Not that much at all. So yeah, it is weird. It's kind of hard to really pinpoint what he's trying to say with some of these scenes when they're referencing some kind of religion here. It's hard to say what he's really going for aside from that. Usually in horror movies, the souls have some kind of connection with religion, just kind of in general with horror movies.
Yeah, I guess my only complaint is if you're going to bring it up in such a way, then you probably should make some kind of statement about it or give us some conclusion as to either Cole's thought process for doing it and why it doesn't work the way he wants it to work. I don't need some rote explanation, but I just don't think I really liked him bringing it up in such a way and then just kind of dropping it.
Yep. I can probably see it being more of a symbol of safety. I mean, they do kind of talk about that and how people would claim sanctuary when they go in there so they wouldn't get arrested. And we do know that Cole is kind of big. He thinks at the beginning he's being haunted by these apparitions when in reality they're seeking help because they're trapped. So my guess, and especially when he brings all those figurines and statues back to his house and puts them up in his tent, he's kind of making his own makeshift sanctuary, aside from that one scene when the girl enters the tent. But yeah, that's really the only thing that they're saying about it. Other than that, it's kind of put on the back burner. They're focusing on, I guess they're focusing more on the character of Malcolm and his dealing and what he's doing with than they are with the topic of religion here.
And as far as it goes with, spirits still being on the world because they have unfinished business left to do, that is nothing new. We have heard that quite a bit in stories and movies.
We talked about that with Jacob's Ladder. So, I mean, this isn't the first time we talked about it either.
Yes, and very much so in Jacob's Ladder. And also, I think even some people believe that to be the case as to if a ghost exists, then it still has some unfulfilled purpose left in life. I've just heard that a lot.
Right.
So that whole premise is really nothing new, but at least Shyamalan packages it and presents it in a more so fresh way, and it's told fairly well. And I would say the character dynamics are really what we're here for. They're the chemistry between Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment, they work together so well. They are such a great duo.
Right. Yeah, this is very much focused on the individual with Malcolm's coming to terms with his death and what he needs to do before he accepts the fact that he is actually dead. That's what the whole movie is about, at least in terms of his character. So, I mean, it makes sense that they're doing this kind of a story because there is still a lesson to be learned here, not just spooky for being spooky. It's spooky, but they at the end of the day, it still has a very good ending, a very, I guess you could say, very heartwarming ending and fulfilling ending.
Yes.
Whereas you could make it all spooky like a lot of other horror movies do. It's kind of hard for me to call this really a horror movie. I would consider it more of a thriller than a horror movie because although it does have horror elements to it, that's not its sole purpose. It's closer to a thriller or a drama that has some spooky elements to it than a full-on horror movie. But still, the whole point of this movie is, I guess you could say, more of a character study than it is trying to scare the audience.
Yeah, the mix of genres is played out really well because yes, it is a drama, but there are a number of horror elements to it, and there are also a lot of thrilling elements to it as well. So blending those genres together into one cohesive film, he does a great job, because this is still very horrifying in many aspects. And one of the other memorable scenes that I have from this movie is Kara, is when he goes to her home for her funeral, and she gives him the VHS tape, and she was playing with puppets, and then the camera kept going, and you see the mom put, like, I don't know what it is, strychnine or something, which is rat poison. And that scene is so dark, on top of extremely other dark scenes that we've already seen. I mean, this movie really can't go much darker, and it's here towards the end. And nor so does Shyamalan want to put the focus on tragedy in this movie, but more so the redemption that can be found, or the justice that can be found through all of this. But gosh, I just forgot how dark this movie is, which makes some of it really hard to watch, especially this whole sequence where we get this head-on shot, which you usually don't ever see. Head-on shot of the dad watching the tape as he's crying while everybody else is watching. I mean, this scene is pretty heavy.
Yeah, this scene is very heavy. This is probably the darkest scene that is in this movie, is this realization that the mom was poisoning the kid the whole time. It doesn't really ever explain the reason behind it. We don't really need a reason behind it. It's more focused on the redemption aspect and how the mom is going to seek, and the mom is now going to have to face justice for what she's done. That's more of what it's focused towards here. And really this whole movie is people coming to terms with what's really happened. There are a few, like the kid we can kind of pick up hints of what happened to these kids, like the kid that walked in with the blood on his head. We can kind of figure that maybe he shot himself. Or, Kira, she is throwing up, so she was probably poisoned by something. We find out later it was her mom. It's kind of interesting that we find out what happened to these souls that were trapped without the movie really fully explaining things. We kind of get a visual, and we can kind of figure out from there what happened to them. Another example would be the old lady in the kitchen that has marks on her arms, and she yells to her husband. We kind of figure out that her husband probably did something to her that killed her. I like this aspect that we can kind of figure out for ourselves what really happened to these souls. And this is one of the only ones outside of Malcolm that actually has some justification and some kind of redemption arc to it. That does help serve the story, mind you. It's also not one, it's just kind of showing how Cole is figuring out what his purpose is for having this kind of psychic ability, more or less, is able to help these souls out. This was when it shows the good in what he has. And
once again, this scene specifically deals with a child that has been dreadfully wronged by a parent. So I think if they got a limited amount of time to choose what Cole, with his gift that he finally finds out. So this was the right one to do. Now, it just turns out to be the dark, but how could it really not be when you're dealing with a child and a tragic circumstance? It just makes it all the more worse when it's with a parent. But nevertheless, it was a good choice. Also, I don't know why, but I always think of The Ring when I see this scene, probably because it deals with a VHS tape and kind of a somber funeral sequence, which we kind of have towards the beginning of that film. So they really have nothing to do with each other except for my recollection of that. One other compliment I did want to give to this movie, and especially here towards the end, where Cole tells his mom his secret, and she finally believes him because he tells him about how grandma comes to him, and the whole reason grandma does is because she doesn't want her daughter to be sad anymore. Shyamalan and Fujimoto do a marvelous job of setting up these static shots filled with so much reflective emotions. You just don't really see this anymore, unfortunately. You don't see many movies with this much, this many static shots. And the static shots do immense favors to drawing us into the scene, but then also just letting us sit with all the emotions that the characters are feeling. So it really does place us within the context of it.
Yeah, it's also just very interesting because here Shyamalan kind of breaks the 180 rule, because usually when you have two characters having a conversation, you have one on one side of the screen and then the other character they're talking to on the opposite side of the screen, right? In this movie, they're both on the exact same side of the frame, which usually you don't want to do, and this was a very good reason why. And I would say here is a really good reason. He has a really good reason why, not because they're in a car, but because it also kind of shows that Cole is getting on to the same level as his mom when they're coming to some kind of understanding, and I guess you could say they're in parallel with how they understand each other. And this is the one scene that I, for some reason, remembered the most about, is this one scene where you have Cole explaining to his mom what exactly is going on, and he finally comes clean to her. And this scene is one of the most emotional ones in this movie. And this week also kind of has a roller coaster of emotions to it. But this is the one scene that, for whatever reason, I remember the most of, is this one scene when he talks to his mom. And yeah, his mom does a really good job here with coming to terms with finding out her kid does have this, whatever is going on with him, this, I guess, the psychic ability, which is what causes him to have these episodes.
Yeah, that is a really good point that you brought up about how they are on the same level now with their understanding, because they have always been off. Because, I mean, it makes sense, because Cole has never been very believable. But first of all, he's a child, and children do make up things. And he has had some kind of difficult sequences to deal with in his life. But I do think the shot, like you said, also serves to show that her world has opened up farther now, just as his world did. And I think that showcased really well with that shot, because we do see Cole and the dead bicyclist. He said somebody died, and you see the dead bicyclist standing right there. And his shot is more so open and her shot is closed. But then, you know, like you said, that 180 rule, her world is much more open, leading to the fact that there is more than meets the eye. Great shot, great scene.
Also, does kind of help explain why her window is open and his is closed. Just wanted to point that out. But I do kind of want to go back to a scene real quick. It's actually right before this. It's the play scene when he is actually it begins with him talking to another apparition who died in the fire, and then Mr. Cunningham kind of helps lead him out towards the stage, and it's the play of King Arthur. Oh. I found that to be very interesting that they decided to have the play centered around King Arthur, and not only centered around that, but also make a point that it's in this movie, because King Arthur is a play that's really about how those who have a pure spirit or a pure mind will be the ones who get the farthest and get the riches, right? Which is exactly the reason why he pulls the sword from the stone, is because King Arthur is pure in spirit. And so it's interesting that they bring this up, and it's Cole who does this, and then he gets to kind of live out his dream of his classmates raising him up and, I guess, praising him like he had mentioned to his mom earlier in the movie. Yeah,
it is a sweet moment, and you also get the bully, who we didn't mention, but the bully gets his comeuppance as well. He's like Silence Peasant or something. So that role reversal is nice. And it does, I do think that's important to give us, not forget the small picture as well, because there is a big picture being played out in everyone's life, but then you have to kind of ground it and bring it back down and show, well, how is this working in Cole's life? How does this affect him? Because earlier that teacher yelled at him and scared him, and now this teacher is being positive towards him. The bully, you know, everybody thinks he's a freak, he's treated horribly, and then to see him raised up, that does also complete that social side of Cole's arc as well in a good scene. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So Shyamalan does a good job of really tying the bow, wrapping everything up on these story arcs that he did bring up, because Cole at school is kind of a major element to the plot throughout the first act, and then even part of the second act as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And yeah, we do kind of get the wrap up between Cole and Malcolm here. He says, why don't you try talking to your wife when she's asleep and try and communicate with her? And then that's pretty much the last thing we have with Malcolm and Cole, is this last piece of advice that he gives him. And then the scene with the mom in the traffic jam. And then we have the scene when we get the twist, which is that Malcolm is dead the whole time.
And I do think it's important that they end their arcs separately, which is an interesting choice considering these are our two protagonists, and usually protagonists' arcs are always wrapped up together in movies, not separately, but they are their own distinct individuals with their own problems that they have to deal with. And it is a unique thing because we almost get two resolutions. There's almost, I guess, two endings to this film. And it's good that Cole's endings come first because nevertheless he is a secondary character and our main character is Malcolm, who we began the movie with. And so his arc is wrapped up as well. So those two endings work really well because honestly the film could have ended with Cole, but we still needed to wrap up with Malcolm. So I thought that was pretty cool. He was able to achieve two endings, and also he doesn't really linger too long. We're really faced with the revelation, and then we just we come to terms with it just as quickly as Malcolm does because we realize that's what the whole movie has been about. Right.
Yeah, he has one more thing he needs to let go of, and that's the fact that he is dead, and he needs to come to terms with, he's dead, and he needs to let go. And that's when he finds out through his wife Anna that, oh yeah, you died. Why did you leave me? And then we see her drop the wedding ring that it was his wedding ring, and we find out, which I actually forgotten about, that he didn't wear his ring the whole movie when he is when he's actually trapped in this purgatory. I forgot that, and so I didn't actively look for it. But now that I think back, I guess that's true because it does kind of play a couple of scenes where, like the dinner scene, he puts his hand on the table and his ring is just not there. So, anyways, that's when he comes to the revelation that, crap, I'm actually dead the whole time. And then it goes back to where we left off at the beginning with him lying on the bed, and we see his last breath before before the end of the movie. And it's a very interesting twist. This is considered to be one of the greatest twists of all time, is the fact that he was dead the whole movie.
Yeah, and it's a great twist. And that is something Shyamalan would go on to be known for, is putting in some sort of twist at the end of every movie. Yeah.
This becomes a director's staple, is the twist that changes everything that you once knew about the movie beforehand.
Yeah, I think I brought up there was like a twist in Wide Awake or something. It wasn't really a twist because I know you're like, that's not really a twist, Corbin. And I'm like, well, it's a Shyamalan twist, so I'm going with it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that.
We could also bring up that we realized Malcolm was never in the basement. Even though we get shots of him in what we assumed was the basement. I mean, he was looking out of a window from underneath his house. Right. But we could, I guess, view that more so, like Alan's brought up throughout the podcast, purgatory, or possibly the recesses of his mind, some otherworldly segment where he is able to peer out at the world. And it's also introspective because that's where he does find the files, his mind files, and uncover further revelations that he was never able to in life, but because in the spirit realm, he's able to access those on a deeper level. So I do like that Shyamalan. I don't think it was really necessary to have the basement be a closed off section like, he never went down inside the basement. I mean, I still think it works, though. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, it is also interesting to also bring up the fact that the bedroom is upstairs, and then the door to the basement is on the opposite level. It's downstairs. Yes. Could be a visualization, at least in terms of the house, of heaven and hell. Doesn't really ever go that far, don't get me wrong. But yeah, the basement part I think is interesting, that it also kind of shows that, he couldn't open it because he was dead the whole time. We never get to see him go into the basement. We see him maybe pull out a key, or I think one time, but that's really about as far as it goes. So yeah, it is interesting that they bring up this red door. I think it also, once again, red is the color that is associated with death in this movie, so it makes sense that he would try and open it with the red doorknob.
Yeah, and I guess the more I think about it, the opening shot is in the basement.
Yeah.
With the wife.
That's right, because the light comes on, and the wife is down there with getting some wine. That's right.
And it is odd because that basement that they have, I'm sure it's bigger than what we realize, but he has like an office set up down there with like a desk and books and stuff, but we never saw that in the opening shot. It was mostly kind of a wine cellar. There may have been some back section to it we weren't aware of, but nevertheless, starting the film off there, and it's kind of a creepy atmosphere, and then supposedly he goes down there to work. It's an okay connection. It's pretty interesting.
I would also, I guess we could bring this up now. The opening shot is a light bulb coming on. It's just kind of a visualization of coming to a realization of something. That's typically what the turning on a light bulb means, especially when we're close up on the light bulb and it kind of slowly turns on. Slowly fades in from black, and then the movie also kind of fades out to black. Kind of this soul kind of coming to terms with that he is actually dead, and then eventually dying, and that's about it for the journey that we see. So yeah, I'm sure that's what the whole connection there is, from my mind at least.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't even think about that or realize that. I'll have to go back and check out the opening again. That's a really good point, is kind of that illumination of the events that are about to unfold.
Yeah. I've come to find out that the opening shots and opening scenes are the most important in the movie because they set up everything that is about to happen afterwards.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you can find everything you need to know about what the movie's going to be about in sometimes the opening shot and sometimes the opening scene, but you may not be realized until after you finish the movie.
The one thing that didn't make any sense is when Malcolm and his wife were talking, and he said, "You were never second, ever." When did she feel she was second? That line didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, they never really explore that at all, if she ever felt that she was second. It probably could be something that she's thinking in her mind because it was his job that killed him. The Vincent kid is the one who did do the job of shooting him, so my guess is that may have been where that thought came into. But yeah, other than that, they really never talk about how he puts his job over anybody else. That could just be something that she ended up coming to terms with on her own by accident, just because of the events that happened, maybe.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. That is a good point.
Yep.
Alan, what is your rating and recommendation for The Sixth Sense?
The Sixth Sense is one of those movies where everything that you see, everything that happens, everything that's written has some kind of great purpose to the story. And I really enjoy movies like this where nothing is wasted. There's no wasted time that we have. Now, this movie may over-explain a few things, and there are some scenes like the scene when the mom sees pictures of Cole in the light next to him, or other scenes where they do kind of over-explain elements that, I don't know, Cole can see dead people or something like that. They feel like that they may be over-explained a few times. But aside from that, once again, everything in this movie doesn't not work. Everything in this movie has a greater purpose to it, and I really enjoy movies that don't waste any time. And that upon subsequent viewings, you can find more and more details that connect to the overall story. I still have some criticisms, as I mentioned earlier, but at the same time, this is still one that I would like to return to and watch again. Although I do find some of it to kind of be a little bit dragging, especially there towards the end, because it is slowly paced. And when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh my gosh, this movie is actually kind of boring. There, at least for a good 45 minutes. But looking at it now, I can see I'm not as bored by it nearly as much as I was the second time I watched it. So, anyways, that all being said, I'm between 8 and 9 with this one. I'm probably going to go 9 with a pretty strong recommend. I'm very impressed with what Shyamalan is able to turn around at least from his last two movies. So anyways, yeah, 9 out of 10 with a pretty strong recommend for me.
M Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense is a film not to be reckoned with, and an incredibly impressive third outing from a director who established himself as a quasi-mediocre guy from his first two films. Shyamalan, with the aid of other great talent, creates a moody, depressing atmosphere of terror that strikes straight to our core fears, that of being misunderstood and feeling out of place in this world. With powerhouse performances, captivating shots, and an ever so unsettling score, this is a solid film. Not only that, but the level of terror this film evokes and the truly depressing nature makes this a great horror film. From the harrowing opening sequence to the phenomenal twist ending, The Sixth Sense is one of the greatest films of the 2000s. I'm giving it 8 stars out of 10 with a strong recommend. Now, like Alan mentioned, I do have just a few complaints that we had talked about throughout this podcast, but there were actually a few shots that I felt were very needless, such as when Malcolm, after Cole is yelled at by the stuttering Stanley, and then Malcolm teaches him the penny trick, and then the penny trick comes back up at the birthday party, all of that felt pointless to me. I guess they're trying to establish character relatability. It just felt waste of time.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, we are finally back with Shyamalan.
But for at least one more week, and then we move on to something else.
For one more week, yeah. We don't want to give you just a overload of Shyamalan. We want to give you a variety of different films and genres. So we hope you enjoyed our previous 2 reviews, which are out now. Pet Sematary and The Road Warrior, which is a part of our Mad Max series, which we will be coming to in 2 weeks. So next week, look for Unbreakable, Shyamalan's next film that also starred Bruce Willis, and which, surprise, is the first installment in a trilogy nobody really knew was going to happen.
Yep.
Okay, anyways, we'll talk about that later on. But then after Unbreakable, we will be getting back to Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I'm excited to watch that. It is on its way right now for Alan and I to watch. And Mad Max Fury Road, we will be wrapping that up. And then we will be returning back to Shyamalan for just a bit before we will be coming into the Men in Black retrospective series, which will lead up to this summer's blockbuster, supposedly, release of Men in Black International. So, Alan, thank you so much for joining me.
Sure thing.
All right, listeners, we've got tons of great reviews coming, like we said, and even more than that planned out on the schedule, so you will not want to miss all of the exciting reviews we have in store. So go ahead, if you haven't already done it, click subscribe right now. Also, subscribe to us through our social media platforms so you never miss a beat. If you go to our website, you can subscribe through email, so you can check that out every Friday while you eat lunch. That's when it comes out. Also, if you do want to support this podcast, if you like what you heard, then go ahead and share it with your friends and family. And then also consider giving us a small donation. For the price of a Starbucks cup of coffee, you get a lot of great content that's yours to keep. The Starbucks coffee is gone. This content is there for you to enjoy forever. You can download it to your computer. We will have all kinds of stuff waiting for you at our Patreon page. That's in the link in the description. Very easy to see. We've got movie commentaries. We have Q&As. We have our thoughts on the latest movie news and trailers. So everything you could want, you can go deeper, and it helps us keep the lights on. That money doesn't go into our pocket for us to go buy the Star Wars Mega Pack collection at Best Buy. That is for us to host this podcast, for the bandwidth, for the storage, to keep everything nice and running and free for you listeners. So we want to say thank you for your continued support. Make sure to go check out that page and support us. It really does help. And if you just can't donate any money at the time, we understand. But what does help us is getting up there in the rankings so other people can hear about our podcast. We love talking about movies, and we love talking about them with you. So wherever you're at, especially on iTunes, that's a really big one, is if you leave us a 5-star review, that will help us increase in the rankings so other people can find our podcast as well. So once again, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week with Unbreakable.